ready to explore the Hebrew roots of your Christian faith? Then grab your Bible and let's get started. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to Reconcile the Kingdom, where we're working towards becoming in a harmony of the whole word of truth. My name is Patrice Robinson, and I appreciate every last one of you who was able to join me on the live premiere, and also those who are able to join me on the replay. I most definitely appreciate every last one of you. So, we always begin with a recap from last week. And what a week of last week. A lot of different teachings on Tuesday, Torah studies at 7 o'clock p.m. Tuesday. And on Saturday, the Sabbath day, we most definitely went over a parable. Now, this is a parable that many people don't consider a parable, or they have a different interpretation of what it is of the defiled man than Yeshua teaches himself. So we kind of focus on that parable, learning according to the scriptures, according to Yeshua, what does it mean to defile, how a man is defiled. And so one thing I do want to talk about, and I probably mentioned this last week, I'm not for sure, but there's two events in the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament, that people seems to interpret as Yeshua is getting rid of the teaching of his father, that this particular dietary food that they're supposed to have. And this is the one we went over in Matthew chapter 15, verses 17 to 23, and also Peter's vision. Those two events people consider as getting rid of the dietary requirements, and it's not. And it's because people are not reading the interpretation itself. Remember, the Bible interprets itself, and most definitely you have to understand that. So we kind of touched bases on that last week. At the end of today's teaching, by the time you see this on replay, I'm going to have in the description box the link to Peter's vision. I think it's very important for us to understand what the word is saying. Also, at the end of this teaching, you do have opportunities to ask questions. So most definitely ask questions, comment, and all those type of things is important. So again, if you missed last week at the end of this premiere, I recommend you to go and watch last week. And then we always have a playlist for you to watch. And one thing, housekeeping thing I want to remind you is that the scrolling at the bottom that you see at the bottom of your screen right now it says Shabbat Shalom. So I put those up there to remind us to do the YouTube things that we need to do. And also the Facebook, follow me on Facebook, follow me on Instagram. Instagram specifically right now is focused on the feast, and then we are repurposing Facebook also. Just want to remind you of that. But I also want to say to you, if this has been your first time, I welcome you. If this is your second time, I welcome you. Third, 300 time, I welcome you. What I don't want you to do is don't forget to hit that subscribe button, comment, and share this live premiere. Let your family know that we are on live. And what are we doing on this live broadcast, this live premiere? We're focusing on the journey of our Messiah, who's supposed to be our mentor. We are exploring the gospel writings. We're exploring what I also consider a manual of discipleship. We are following his footsteps and learning what he has did and what he had taught so that we can follow his footsteps the best way that he can. And many are not teaching this, and many are not going through the gospels to see what he had taught and what he had did. So invite your friends and your family, and don't forget to give me a thumbs up. Anytime you have learned something and figured out something new, please don't forget to give me a thumbs up and comment and continue to share. I greatly appreciate that. So I want to remind you that you should have your Bible before you, pen and paper, take notes, and don't forget your highlighter. I always recommend your highlighter because we are comparing the events that we read in the Bible. We no longer using the word story. We're trying to come away from that, and these are historical events because you are a believer. You're a believer of the Bible that all of this happened. So, as we are going through the events of today, I want us to really focus on faith. As we have been reading and going through the Gospels, it takes faith. And we've been reading about people of different levels of their faith. We're learning about how the Messiah had ran into two different people, at least two, how he commented on how great their faith was. One being the Satirian, who was seeking for help to heal his servant. You remember this. We found this in Luke and Matthew. Remember, this Satirian soldier who was a man of authority, who understood authority, and all Yeshua had to do was send the word back that his servant is healed, and they receive the word only. He didn't need to come into his home. And so I want to remind you, I'm going to read what Yeshua said about his faith. Luke 7:9. Now, when Yeshua heard this, he was amazed at him and turned and said to the crowd that was following him, he turned and said to the crowd, I say to you, not even in Israel have I found such great faith. So he has not found any faith among the children of Israel at this point. Many of us understand or we believe that faith is a strong belief. But faith also requires action behind it. Faith is demonstrated. When you see a person of faith, you know that they have faith because they're demonstrating their capability to have faith. Just like the children of Israel who struggled with their faith back in the wilderness because they couldn't mix, they couldn't put the faith and action together because they was not hearing faith. They were hearing words. But the Hebrew writer says this in verse 4 and 2. For indeed, we have good news preached to us. Remember, they was preached the gospel in the wilderness. And now we today, just like them in the day of Yeshua, are hearing the gospel because they were not able to unite those who listened with faith. Remember, there were only two people who went among them spies that have great faith. That was Joshua and Caleb. And the others they couldn't have, they didn't have the faith like Joshua and faith and Joshua and Caleb. They did not have the faith at all. We all understand that faith is a certainty of things hoped for without the evidence being seen. So we do know that we are ensured things that we hope for without understanding or seeing it. We don't have to understand everything that Jehovah speak to us, but we have faith and without seeing it. Kind of like what Abraham, when he called Abraham, matter of fact, it is. When he called Abraham, Abraham didn't have no idea where this land was. Did not understand where he was going. He was going off the instructions of Jehovah, but he kept moving because of the faith that he knew that he had of the Elohim that created everything. Those are just examples that are in the gospel. There's only two examples, I should say, in the gospel writings that there are people that had great faith that Yeshua had recognized. And these two people are not from the children of Israel. These two people are from the other nations. And one, like we talked about, is the Satirian person. And we are going to read today about another person that had great faith that he spoke of. Now, remember, Yeshua and the disciples are in Tyre and Sidon. That's where we left off last week. So, for your notes, we are going to be in Matthew chapter 15, verse 22 through 28, Mark chapter 7, verses 24 through 30. And we are going to read as this is Matthew 15 through verse 22 through 28. And the Canaanite woman from the region came out and began to cry out, saying, "Have mercy on me, Lord, son of David. My daughter is cruelly demon possessed." But he did not answer her a word. And his disciples came and implored him, saying, "Send her away, because she keeps shouting at us." But he answered and said, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." But she came and began to bow down before him, saying, "Lord, help me." And he answered and said, "It is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to dogs." But she said, "Yes, Lord, but even the dogs feed on the crumbs which fall from the master's table." Then Yeshua said to her, "O woman, your faith is great. It shall be done for you as you wish." And her daughter was healed at once. Again, her faith was great. This is a Canaanite woman. This is not a woman of Jewish faith, Judaism, from none of the tribes of Israel. This is a Canaanite woman. Again, he is not in Israel. He's in Tyre and Sidon. He is not in Israel. Mark 7, chapter 7, verse 24 through 30. And Yeshua got up, went away from the region of Tyre, and when he had entered a house, what house had he entered? He's not in among the children of Israel. It doesn't even give us information whose home he had entered. But we do know, again, that he's not in Israel. And he wanted no one to know of it. Yet he could not escape notice. But after hearing of him, a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit immediately came in and fell at his feet. Now, the woman was a Gentile and of the Syrophoenician race, meaning she had Phoenician and Syra race. And she kept asking him to cast the demon out of her daughter. And he was saying to her, "Let the children be satisfied first, for it is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to dogs." Again, dogs in Matthew, dogs in Mark. But she answered and said to him, "Yes, Lord, but even the dogs under the table feed on the children's crumbs." And he said to her, "Because of this answer, go. The demon has gone out of your daughter." And going back to her home, she found her child laying on the bed. The demon had left her. So again, we have a Gentile woman, a woman of another nation. She's not among the Jews. She's not among the children of Israel. She's not among when I say Jews, I mean it's the tribe of Judah. She's not from any of the tribes of Israel, but she's calling out to the Messiah. She recognizing him as son of David. What makes that important to understand? Because she was able to recognize his kingship, his authority of who he is. She was able to recognize this. Again, she was a Syrophoenician woman off the coast of Syria. Her daughter was possessed by a demon. But I want to remind you again, she's a Gentile woman. But she was a Gentile woman, and so was the children of Israel from the tribe of Judah, all the different tribes. These They were both possessed by demon, these different nations, along with the children of Israel. They all was he was fighting demons from the Greeks people, actually that's Roman, Satirian man trying to heal him, and other people possessed by demon. So, in other words, I should say, the demons they're not picky. They are not picky of who they will possess. Anyone who is walking into lawlessness is leaving themselves open to this. Now, again, she was yelling for help, and the children of Israel, the disciples, of which are the children of Israel, did not like this at all. They did not like this. For one, let's talk about why they didn't like this. So, in the land of that day, the Pharisees teaching, remember the Pharisees are the ones that over the synagogue, was that you cannot fellowship with other nations. Although the teaching of the Tanakh is that you'll be a light to other nations, you're supposed to bring other people in. So if you're not fellowshipping as far as bringing someone in, it won't happen from the other nations because they are separating themselves from the other nations. So the disciples wanted this woman to go away, so they didn't want to hear from her, and they wanted Yeshua to send her away. So they was in this mindset of ignoring her, and so this is what they were focused on. But Yeshua wanted her to know that he did not come for the other nations. Right now, he is trying to make sure the children are satisfied first. And this is the children of Israel because they were lost. We're not talking about the lost 10 tribes of Israel. We addressed that in season one, because the reason why we address that, because we do see in the gospel writings other people from other nations, including some of those from the 10 tribes. We addressed that already. So we're not going to address that today. So you can go back through season one and figure out which episode that was in. So Yeshua go, he was sent by the Father. He was coming to bring the children of Israel back to him. And this is what, calling the other nations, I don't know if this was a metaphor, but he did call her a dog, and she didn't stop. So Matthew 15:26. And he answered and said, "It is not good to take the children's bread and to throw it to dogs." And it was more like, I am not giving you the bread because it has to go to the children of Israel. But we do know he has healed other people, like the Satirian servant, and other people. And Mark 7:27, he says, "Let the children be satisfied first." I want to come satisfy the children of Israel because they're lost. I'm trying to bring them back to the Father. For it is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. Remember, healing is the bread of the children. And so this is what he's saying. This is what I'm bringing this to the children of Israel. But this again did not discourage her. She was still going after Yeshua. She wanted him to know that I know what you're saying, but I want the healing. Even if it's crumbs, I wanted. She was willing to take whatever he was given because she heard about the miracles. She heard about what has been happening in Israel and Galilee and many other places that he went. She had heard, and she knew that he was the only person that is able to change things for her family. He's the only one that can turn it around. And she wanted her daughter to be set free. And this is what he had done for her because she had demonstrated great faith. She and the Satarian both have demonstrated great faith. And this is the only time that I have found this in the gospel is by these two people who was from the other nations, not from the children of Israel, but from these two people. And what we are going to continue on that the faith of people had for Yeshua continued on. It continued even when he returned back. It does not end because he stayed focused on his mission. He stayed focused on working the kingdom that the Father sent him to do, to demonstrate, to teach, because again, the children of Israel are lost. They are walking around without a shepherd. They are sheep without shepherd. That is to we have to remember. So, not only is he demonstrating the kingdom to the children of Israel that's in the land at that time, he is also demonstrating the kingdom to the other nations because they're witnessing, they're coming to him, they know what he is capable of doing. So I just wanted to point that out. Our next event, we're gonna finish up with this last event. For your notes, Matthew 15:29 through 31, Mark chapter 7, verses 31 through 37. Matthew 15:29 through 31. Departing from there, Yeshua went along by the Sea of Galilee. Having gone up on the mountain, he was sitting there. You know, I don't think he wanted to, I think this is another time that he wanted to be alone. But verse 30, and large crowds came to him, bringing with them those who were lame, crippled, blind, mute, and many others that had laid them down at his feet, and he healed them. So the crowd marveled as they saw the mute speaking, the crippled restored, the lame walking, the blind seeing, and they glorified the Elohim of Israel. They glorify the Father because of what Yeshua was doing. Mark 7:31-37. Again, he went out from the region of Tyre and came through Sidon to the Sea of Galilee within the region of Decapolis. So now Matthew didn't tell you this, but Mark is telling you that he's back into the region of Decapolis. They brought to him one who was deaf and spoke with one who was deaf, spoke with difficulty, and they implored him to lay his hand on him. So someone brought someone to him that is deaf and had difficult speaking. So let's see what Yeshua did. Verse 33. Yeshua took the person aside from the crowd, went by himself, put his fingers into his ears. After spitting, he touched his tongue with the saliva, and looking up to heaven in a deep sigh, he said to him, Ephatha, 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 that is, be open. So that's a Aramaic language or Chaldeans. And I don't know if Aramaic and Chaldeans might be quite, yeah, they are similar to one another. Verse 35, and his ears were opened, and the impediment of his tongue was removed, and he began speaking plainly. And he gave them orders not to tell anyone. Don't tell anyone about this. Remember, he set them to the side. Don't tell anyone. But the more he ordered them, the more widely they continued to proclaim it. They were utterly astonished, saying, "He has done all things well. He makes even the deaf to hear and the mute to speak." Again, Yeshua, with his disciples, witnessing this, went back along the Sea of Galilee, Decapolis, and the people seeing him go up to the mountain, and they bringing people to him. They bringing those that are lame, crippled, blind, many other people. But I think what really stood out to me is this one person that he put to the side. He left the crowd and went by himself with this person and put his fingers in his ears and put spit on his finger and put the saliva in this man's mouth on his tongue. And he prayed, and his ears were open, and he was able to speak plainly. Only Yeshua could have done that at that time. Only Yeshua could have done that. And so he was teaching these miraculous miracles that were happening that no one has ever heard of. There is no prophet in the Tanakh who has done greater work than Yeshua himself. No other prophet. Yes, prophets did some miracles. Someone raised from the dead. I mean, there's so much has happened in the Tanakh, and it's not to ignore the Tanakh. It's very important, but no one has did these greater works as Yeshua has done. But then afterwards, we begin to see what happens with the disciples when we get into, and the apostles when we get into the book of Acts. So Yeshua was about the Father's business. He was not joking. He stayed focused, and I'm telling you, the people most definitely have benefit of healing and raising from the dead. There was so much that Yeshua was doing, but he did not teach the people to break the commandments of his Father. He told the people that you had to follow the commandments of the Father. So that is something that we must understand and not forget. Again, we have time for comments and questions, and I don't see any questions. I do have a comment from one person, and I'm going to acknowledge that person. That's my grandson because he watches. So again, if you do not have any comments, no questions, and things like that today, you most definitely to be able to put those comments, questions in the replay for those who watch this at a later time. And I really appreciate every last one of you who was able to come in on today, and also again those who will be coming in the replay. I want us to remember that we do have a feast that is coming up. We're still in the 12th biblical month, and I recommend you to join me on Instagram as we are getting prepared for the unleavened bread, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and the meal of Passover. So we are getting ready for those on Instagram. And I look forward to seeing you on Tuesday at 7 o'clock p.m. as we're going through the Torah studies. I mean, people can ignore the Torah all they want to, but the Torah is most definitely written quite a bit in the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament, but you won't understand that unless you get some foundation in the Torah. May Jehovah bless you and keep you. May Jehovah shine his face on you and give you his favor. May he shine his face towards you and give you his peace. In the mighty name of Yeshua, I appreciate you for joining me on today.